Well, Plan B is a safe place for you, your money, and your assets if you have to get out of Dodge. I highly recommend offshore. I've been working with SWP for a while. I love SWP very much. Some countries have no tax department. Tax heaven. Where are you going to be? What are you going to do with your life? Safety. Everybody wants safety. I want to share with you guys my 4+1 strategy.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's SWP webinar. My name is Dave Lawson. I'm the sales manager here at Strategic Wealth Preservation, and it's great to have you with us. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to be here. We all know life is busy, so I appreciate you joining us to talk about something that matters, protecting your wealth and, more importantly, protecting your future. Now, I'm very excited to introduce our guest tonight, Mikkel Thorup. He's the founder and CEO of Expat Money, host of the Expat Money Show podcast, and the author of several #1 best-selling books, including Expat Secrets, How to Pay Zero Taxes, Live Overseas, and Make Giant Piles of Money. Now, admittedly, I haven't read the book, but that title has definitely got me wanting to pick up a copy. Mikkel has visited over 100 countries. He's lived in 9. And since 2017, he's helped clients all around the world legally diversify their wealth and their lifestyles. His expertise covers everything from international tax planning and offshore structuring to securing secondary residencies and building a global investment portfolio. So realistically, I could probably talk for about 20 minutes about Mikkel, about everything he's involved with and, fluff up his resume, but that's not why we're here tonight. So today, he's going to be sharing the strategies he uses with private clients to protect their assets, create political insurance, and build the ultimate plan B before the next crisis hits. So with that, we're going to dive in. Please join me in welcoming Mikkel Thorup. And Mikkel, I'll pass the mic over to you.
Thank you very much, David, for having me. And I actually see a lot of familiar people. So hello, Ulf. Hey, Harry, long time no see. We were just in Brazil together. Amazing. Luann, Lawrence. I mean, I know a ton of people in this group, actually. I actually have a lot of private clients in this group. So that's amazing. So, okay, my presentation tonight is you bought the gold, now build the Plan B fortress. So I really want to go through for you guys a complete asset protection blueprint for gold holders who really want to stay sovereign, silent, and in control. Okay. I think privacy is very, very important. So I'm going to run through this. Before we jump in, I'm going to explain a little bit about who I am and why I get to talk about this. David mentioned a couple of things about me. But as he said, my name is Mikkel Thorup. I host the Expat Money podcast. We've been doing 8-9 years, 350 some odd episodes. I've authored 3 books about living overseas and immigration. Traveled to somewhere around 120 countries now, lived in 9, and circumnavigated the globe over 400 times. I get around 3 million people a year who read and listen to my work on the expat space. I sit on the board of directors for multiple companies, both private and a public company, as well as board member for 501c3 nonprofit, ambassador council for Free Cities Foundation, advisory board for Tipolis, so some pretty big companies. Founder and CEO of Expat Money, 30-person award-winning consulting firm that's really focused on helping individuals find freedom. Now, that's all awesome, but more than anything, what I hope you guys take away from today's presentation is that I am still massively passionate about this work, even after 25 years of doing it. I also, before jumping into the presentation, I wanted to make a quick invitation to you guys to pick up one of our special reports we did on Plan B residencies and instant citizenships. This is a good companion to a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today. It is going to fill in a lot of the things that I just won't have time to go over today. So we're going to talk about the 5, in the special report, it'll talk about the 5 unique ways to get a second passport, including a way that almost nobody ever talks about. The best second citizenship programs available and how to instantly acquire another passport. The #1 thing newbies into the world of immigration must watch out for, and what you should expect to pay for a residency, and how to make sure you stay within budget on this. And because you will see a variety of prices, and people often like to leave out some of the costs, which I think is a little bit sneaky. Um, This is going to explain a lot of that. So there's going to be a ton in there, but just a quick invitation. If you guys want to pick it up, go to expatmoney.com. You can sign up for the newsletter and grab that. It's right on the front page. Okay. So what is a plan B? Okay. If we're throwing around this word, what is a plan B or an economic plan B? Well, plan B is a safe place for you, your money, and your assets if you have to get out of Dodge quickly. All right. So the main thing that people need to keep in mind, or what you need to keep in mind when developing a plan B, is really we need to have a safe place to stay. So we need somewhere for your physical safety. Okay. We need to structure it securely. So using different types of structures, and we're going to get into that in a few minutes. We need to be able to protect your privacy. We don't need your name splashed all over the internet or, found in public registry or anything like that. We need to secure a free flow of capital, so no capital controls, easy to get money into a place and easy to get money out of a place. Ideally, tax optimized. I specialize in low tax or zero tax countries. And we want to secure your freedom of movement. So, if you have one passport, that's great. You're going to be able to get into certain countries with that. But what happens if you lose that passport or something happens to that passport? We need to be able to secure your freedom of movement. And then, of course, somewhere that's going to fit your lifestyle, somewhere that you actually enjoy spending time. I think that this is not talked about enough, is actually finding somewhere that's, going to fit who you are and the type of life that you want to have. Okay. So why do we care? Like, what is the point of this? Why do we need a plan B? Right. So for me, I mean, in my work as a consultant, the main things that I've seen is political instability. I think people definitely want to protect against political instability and what's happening. We look at the social unrest that we've seen in our countries over the last couple of years, and these types of peaceful protesters that end up burning car lots and smashing windows and doing all kinds of things. I don't think that's very good. Now, obviously, the left right divide and the divisiveness where families are not talking to each other, college friends, you're not communicating with them anymore. There's this divide that's put in between, and if you don't want to be a part of that anymore, you know what, the rest of the world is not so politically charged. Actually, when you live overseas, it's not normal conversation that everything is politics at all times. I look at people I know from back home, and it's like the only thing they want to talk about. It's like I live overseas. I want to go barbecuing and drink some nice red wine, or hang out with my kids and stuff like that. I don't need to be every minute looking at the politics. So it's really nice just to take a break from all of that. Then financial collapse and insolvent banks. We saw this in 2023, 2024. We've seen this in the past with different banks who are over leveraged, who are doing risky things in New York and things like this. So I mean, don't think this is any surprise for people who are on a gold webinar that, not having all of your money held in cash in a US bank or Canadian bank is probably not a great idea. And then war and geopolitical conflict, government aggression against their populace, money printing, money printers go burr, and all the inflation that we're seeing, and then these forced health mandates that we got to experience during the last 5 years, lockdowns, closures of business, disgusting woke cancel culture, which I'm completely against on all fronts. So really, the plan B is your political insurance against all of these things. Okay. I think it's at this point, I think people really must have a plan B. I don't think it's really optional at this point anymore. So, what I want to do in today's presentation is I want to share with you guys my 4+1 strategy. And this is the same strategy that I've used with my $30,000 a year private clients that I work with all day, every day. This is the same framework that I use to help them through the process. Okay. So, number one in our 4+1 is immigration. Okay. This is going to be the foundation of a lot of the work that I think goes into a plan B. So, immigration is really going to secure your freedom of movement. Now, the first thing that we're looking for in immigration is a permanent residency. So, a permanent residency is a visa to live, work, and do business in a foreign country. So, what often happens with people is they just seem to think that you can show up in another country with your passport and, stay. I mean, you can go there and, visit for 30 days, 60 days, maybe 90 days if you're lucky. But at some point, you're going to have to leave. And this is where a residency permit is going to come into the play. Okay. If you have a permanent residency, this means you have the permanent ability to live and be in the country. Now, there's caveats, there's things that you must comply with. It might be a minimum time on ground, or it might be an investment that you have to hold for a certain amount of time. But by and large, you can live there for the rest of your life. I have permanent residencies in many countries. I have the ability to live in many places around the world, in different continents and all over the place. And this gives me a lot of freedom of movement. Okay. I can enter into a country. And even when there were lockdowns and governments closed their borders, they were closing the borders for tourists. They weren't closing the borders in most cases for expats, for foreigners who have a permanent residency there, or for citizens. Okay. So if you had this in place, then these laws, these rules didn't apply to you. Okay. So this is hugely advantageous. Now, this is going to give you the majority of the rights of someone who is actually born in the country. Okay. So if you're a permanent resident, then you're going to have the same rights as someone who is actually born there. There might be a couple of differences. The number one, or the number two or three things, let's say, is you're probably not going to be able to participate in voting if that's your thing, if you want to participate in the democratic process. You can't hold office. You can't be president of a country if you're a permanent resident. And you can't serve in the armed services. Darn, that's not really my thing, but if it's yours, you can't do it in a foreign country as a permanent resident. So those are three things that personally I don't care about. The one thing that I do care about, and we're going to get into in more detail in a second, is the passport. So a passport only comes when you become a citizen into a country. Okay. So I think that one is very valuable. I'm not so sure about the others. Now, this is going to give you a solid foundation for building your life in the new country. I've seen people who have gone into a country and they're on a tourist visa and they want to buy a second piece of real estate, but they have to leave every 60 days. This is what we call a visa run. And, you can't register a vehicle in your name and you can't get a bank account and all these things. I would find that really stressful personally, and that's why my company is called Expat Money. We're dealing with the financial side of expat living. It's not digital nomad, where you're going into a country just for a couple of months. This is actually living in another country and setting up the plan B. Now, this can eventually lead to citizenship, which is called naturalization. Naturalization is the process of being in a country for a certain amount of time. And then after going through the process and becoming a citizen of that country and getting the passport. All right. So this is why this is the basis. Usually with my clients, we're getting them a permanent residency in a country that they enjoy spending time in. And then we're going to get them a second passport as a travel document from another country. So let's talk a little bit about citizenships. So a citizenship is the ultimate option. Okay. It's when you can say, like, I am Brazilian or I am El Salvadorian. All right. Now, you're going to have all the rights as someone who was actually born in that country. If you go through the naturalization process or you were born in that country, you're going to have the same rights. And in most cases, your citizenship can be passed on to the next generation of your family. So, for example, I'm a St. Kitts citizen. Okay. I purchased a St. Kitts passport. And when I had my newest children, I have four children, four kids, they get their St. Kitts passport on the back end of it because I'm a citizen. Okay. So I was able to pass that on to my kids. And we actually get the passport. I was just in Brazil last week and I got to use my St. Kitts passport to enter into Brazil. I didn't have to use my Canadian passport, which means I got to not have to pay for a visa or anything like that. There were no extra fees. The immigration officer didn't really know what was going on. He'd never heard of St. Kitts and Nevis before. So we had to kind of educate him and pull up Google and Wikipedia, but that's okay. Don't worry about that. Now, as I said, the citizenship is forever. Okay. You're going to have that and you're going to be able to renew the passport. The passport is just a travel document. This is going to allow you to travel between different countries. The way I think about it is like a driver's license. Driver's license allows you to enter the motorway and go on the roads. This is the same thing, but instead of on the roads, it's going between countries. It's the diplomatic relationship between different countries, this is the physical representation of it. You go in, you get a stamp. Okay. That's it. Passports expire, passports come and go. I've had many passports in my life. That's not the thing. That shouldn't be the goal. The goal should always be the citizenship. Then you can take your citizenship certificate and get a second passport. Even if your passport expires and 20 years has gone by, but you're still a citizen there, you can always go and get another passport. By the way, all these photos in the presentation are of trips that I've done with clients of mine or things from my family. So, for example, this is my son's Chilean passport. My first child was born in the UAE, my second child in Brazil, my third child in Chile, and our fourth child in Mexico. So all of our kids have second passports from these countries, as well as Canadian passports, as well as St. Kitts, as well as other ones, because we've been very intentional about increasing the number of options that we have for our family. Okay. So the second passport can actually increase the number of countries that you're going to be able to travel to visa free. So, if your country allows you to go to 170 countries, well, there's 193. So there's 93 countries that you can't go to without a visa. For example, my story I just gave you about Brazil. Canadians cannot enter into Brazil without a visa, but St. Kitts can. So that's why I use that passport. There's lots of places in the world that you can't go. So having a second passport can increase the amount of countries you can go to, right? Now, if you have to send off your passport away for a visa, because let's say, for example, I went to Iran in 2012 or 2013. I had to send my Canadian passport away and to be able to get a visa. Sometimes it takes a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to be able to get a visa. For me, that would make me so nervous about not having an option, a get out of Dodge plan, you know, if I didn't have a second passport. So it's fine for me now. I can send either my primary passport or my secondary passports away to get a visa, and I'm not a prisoner. I like having options. Okay. And then this can open up additional doors for investment opportunities as well. Banking, real estate, different type of private placements. Many things can open up if you're a citizen of another country. So that was number one in our 4+1. Number two is international investments. And this is a really important one because this is your freedom of capital, being able to do what you want with your money and be able to move it freely. Okay. So free flow of capital. Now, in this, the work that I do, it really focuses on offshore bank accounts, international brokerage accounts, precious metal accounts, a very, very big one here for sure. Um, Crypto accounts, if you're into crypto, I started buying Bitcoin in 2016. So I have a long history with Bitcoin, not a lot of these dodgy coins, but I mean, I'm very much a fan of some of the more premium coins, let's say. Merchant accounts. So if you have an online business, if you want to be able to collect payments, then accepting credit cards in offshore accounts can be very good. We set up these types of accounts for clients all the time. Um, it can be a little bit tricky. There's a lot to it, but international merchant accounts are very valuable for sure. Holding currencies in or holding cash in different types of currencies, whether that be, I mean, of course, US dollars and, some people euros, but think about Swiss francs or Great British pounds or other types of currencies out there. Even things in the Caribbean, some of these currencies have a lot less inflation. So there can be very good options for different types of currencies. And then being able to legally avoid capital controls. I mean, I think we're absolutely seeing capital controls put into place right now. Certainly in my country of Canada, this is happening as we speak. And I think it's going to be happening around the world. We see some really disgusting behavior coming out of Europe as well, where they're trying to control where money goes and how you spend money. And the new CBDC, the e-euro type of thing. I mean, I think that's really worrying. So I want to be able to have capital in different places. And I'm not telling anyone to break the law. The exact opposite. I'm telling you to follow the law, but having options in more places. Okay. And then stability of the institution. So we want to understand, the jurisdiction risks and the geopolitics risk, but then the institution, so the bank or the financial platform itself, understanding what is their CAR, their capitalization rate, how does that look, what's on their balance sheet, what do their books look like. We do really in-depth analysis about a lot of the banks that we work with. For example, every year we publish a Panama banking report where we go through every single bank in the country of Panama, which is a lot. It's something like 55 international banks here. And we actually send the lawyers down and they have meetings with the bank managers. We go through their financial reports and we look at everything. We understand line by line what's happening in every single bank. So we're able to move our money into really well capitalized banks and, English speaking banks and have good customer service and different branches and all these things. So we really know where our money is going because the trend in North America is, oh, everything is FDI insurance. And, I'm insured up to $250,000. So everybody just dumps cash into these banks and doesn't take the personal responsibility to look what's going on with the bank. And I think this is terrible, actually. I don't want the government to be in there to bail out everything. I want to take personal responsibility and try to look at these things and understand them myself, because otherwise it's creating moral hazard. And I don't agree with that whatsoever. So we definitely need to look at the stability of the institutions that we're working with. And then it's the ability to access capital. I think that SWP is doing an amazing job with SWP Capital, being able to be your own bank, being able to purchase precious metals and then take a loan against it in the future if needed. I mean, if you guys have not looked at the amazing work that SWP is doing on this, I mean, you absolutely should, because this is the primary function of banking. So everybody just thinks it's, having a debit card or a credit card or something like that. It's access to capital. That's what banking is there for. By the way, this is a project, a property that I developed with my partners in Brazil, and these were the caretakers there. I actually was staying at this last week, and such a beautiful place. The beach is like right there. I paid 97 or 99,000 for the unit 2.5 years ago, and the one next to me just sold for 193 unfurnished. So we're doing huge real estate investments with like massive capital appreciation in a number of different countries. So the next one would be having a second home. Now, we're looking for a second home that is going to be reasonably priced. I don't want something that's going to be like way out of somebody's budget or, taking expensive loans or mortgages or anything like that. I prefer purchasing everything debt free. I'm very particular about this. Or if you have to get a bit of a loan or something, then with as little down or as little mortgage as possible. So none of these 5% down or 10% down that you see some people talking about. So reasonably priced is very important. Has to be title deed, freehold. I don't want any of this leasehold or Mexican bank trust or anything like that that you might read about online. It has to be a title deed, so you actually own the property. And then it can be rented out when not using it. So you're going to be able to cash flow, which is very, very important, especially with my clients. The majority of my clients, I'd say 50-50, are either highly paid professionals like lawyers, doctors, accountants, financial planners. I'd say probably number one client base for me is probably lawyers. I probably have more lawyers as clients than anything else. And it's quite simple. They bill at very high amounts, and I'm able to save them massive amounts of time. But as they sell their practice, then they need to replace this with cash flow. And then the other side of it is small business owners. I have a lot of people who have small businesses and they want to get out or they want to step back from roles and responsibilities. They still need cash flow to be able to live off of. So if we can build out a portfolio of rental properties or a second home that's going to cash flow when they're not using it, that's very, very nice. Now, the property is in high demand, which means that it's liquid. I don't want to buy a property that's like very unique and down this weird path. And you have to kind of have the vision and, it's going to be like an interesting architecture that's going to speak to some people, but not other people. It's like, no, I want properties that are going to be universally beautiful to everybody. That means that if I need to sell it, I'm going to have a buyer within a week or 2 weeks or something like that, and because it's reasonably priced, people can afford it. We can always price things to sell as well. If I need to discount it by a couple of percent to get it going fast, I think that's fine. Now, I get this question all the time because literally all of my clients, everybody who I work with, are absentee owners. So we have to have property management on site. So very important to have property management on site. Obviously, stable country, stable currency, that goes without saying. And ideally, this will qualify you for immigration. So going back to number one in our 4+1, the immigration side. So if we can get you a permanent residency, if we can get you a second passport on the back end of it, that's amazing. That I'm very, very happy with that. Okay. And then it's going to retain value. So you're not going to lose value on it. It's easily accessible. This means I'm looking at flight paths. I hate layovers more than anything in the world. I want to make sure everywhere I have a property, there's direct flights there, that it's very easy to get from the airport to the property, easy to go and visit, etc. And then quality builds. So what often happens is when I work with a project, there's a European or an American or someone who's moved to another country and they have local partners, and then they're bringing best practices from North American standards or European standards down there, and then doing an amazing job in the local market in these developing countries. Because I still want to live in a beautiful home that's well built and made out of solid building materials, etc. So just because you're living in a different country doesn't mean you have to give up on those things. Okay. So that's what we're looking for a little bit on a second home. But even more than that would be building out a portfolio of investment properties. As people are getting out of the stock market, I'm really recommending, actually, quick side note. So my wife is from China. We've been married for 10 years. And when we got married, my wife came to me and said, listen, baby, I love you, and you can invest in anything you want. I trust you completely. You can invest in anything you want as long as it is gold and real estate. I'm like, okay, amazing. We're going to get along very well. So, literally, besides a little bit of Bitcoin, everything I own is gold and real estate. That's it. I don't mess around in the stock market at all anymore. So, we build out a portfolio of cash flowing properties. So I usually build out the portfolio for clients in 3 to 5 countries at one time, depending on the size of the portfolio. Now, what I've seen, and none of this is financial advice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All investment contains risk, blah, 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 blah. Cash on cash net returns. And for me, net means it is excluding everything: HOA, property taxes, management, gas, hydro, everything except your personal income tax. Everybody's personal income taxes is different, so I can't comment on that. But for me, a net return, long-term rentals, probably around 6 to 8. It's probably closer actually to 6 to 9% with some new projects that I'm doing. And then short-term rentals, are usually around 9 to 12%. All right, that's the cash on cash return. Okay, so that's the realized gains. That's what money in your pocket that you can bank on every single month. Okay, or this would be annual returns, but you get what I mean. Then you have capital appreciation. Capital appreciation could be anywhere from 5 to 10% annually. So really, what you're going to do is you're going to take that 5 to 10% annual of capital appreciation, which is an unrealized gain, and you're going to add it to the cash on cash and put them together. So this could be anywhere from short-term rentals to, 14 to 22% appreciation annually. That's not bad. I think that's very, very good. And if we structure things properly, it can even be higher than that. So there's some very good ways of doing this. Now, this comes down to geo arbitrage or currency arbitrage, taking euros or British pounds or US dollars, or maybe not so much Canadian dollars anymore, but taking that currency and coming down here to Latin America or the Caribbean, and the dollars go a lot further, and you're able to get how much further? Well, a lot of my clients are picking up nice places to stay for around $100,000. That includes closing costs, sometimes furniture packages and everything around the $100,000 mark. So, if you have $1 million back home in your primary residence, well, you can get rid of that, clear your mortgage, move down here. Even if you had a really nice place, double it, put a couple $100,000 into a place to live, and then buy 6 or 8 investment properties and live off of the cash flow. That's a pretty good option, I would say. Now, path of progress for us is looking at, there's going to be a new bridge coming, or a new airport, or roundabout, or port, or supermarket, or gas station, or any of these types of things. So it's a rising tide lifts all boats through this. All right. Now, solid property rights for foreigners, very important. Safe and secure location, because as I said, absentee owners, and then low holding costs, low property taxes. So if you rent the property out for one night, then you're very good. and then no capital controls in the country. So number three, and I got to pick up pace a little bit because we were a little bit slow on the front end. So structures, corporate structures, LLCs, IBCs, SAs, LA, limited partnerships, trusts, foundations. We do lots of different types of structures. Being able to use these structures to hold assets, to hold your precious metals, to hold your Bitcoin, to hold your investment properties, safety deposit boxes, corporate documents, all these things, putting it in a type of structure so that it can get passed on to the next generation in a more tax favorable and organized manner. So some of the benefits that we're looking for are obviously liability protection. It's not as litigious of a country down here in Latin America as the United States, but still we need to protect against liability. Privacy and anonymity. I don't really want anybody else knowing my business. Estate planning, like I said, I got 4 kids, so I want to make sure my wife and my children are well taken care of, that things are passed on properly to them, that there's no death tax, etc., that they're not going through probate. And then tax optimization. So I don't want to pay, we have a legal obligation to pay how much taxes, we owe, but not $1 more. And we have the entire tax code to work with to try to legally reduce that. And that's for me, is our moral obligation is to pay as little tax as humanly possible. I think that's fantastic. As a Canadian, I mean, you can live overseas. If you're not a Canadian tax resident, you can bring your taxes down to zero in most cases. Americans, it gets a little bit more difficult because you're taxed on worldwide income, but there's still some IRS programs that we can work with to lower your taxes. And then organization of your financial life, and then the legacy planning. So passing on assets not just to your kids or your grandkids, but your great grandkids. We're doing a big mastermind workshop at the end of this year in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's a high level mastermind, and we're going to be crafting our 100-year plan. So working with families how to do legacy planning for 100 years and beyond. So what does that look like? What is the mentality? How do you structure things? What type of vehicles? How do you get in the right headspace for these things? And then precious metals, I'm going to quickly go over this one because you guys know precious metals better than anyone. So definitely store some at your home, $1,000, $2,000, $10,000. But at some point, you're going to need to look at a vault, a depository. I highly recommend offshore. I've been working with SWP for a while. Full confidence in them. They're amazing. I love SWP very much. Now, from my side, we're always doing a threat analysis with our clients. So we're looking at many different things. What are we trying to protect against? But is it an investment? Well, then we're looking at, in my opinion, largest bars and as close to spot price as humanly possible. And if we're looking at barter, if we're looking at the zombie apocalypse, maybe easily recognizable coins or sovereigns, something that if you have a maple leaf or a buffalo or a Krugerrand or whatever, that it's going to be very, very easy to recognize. You're going to get it swapped very quick. Okay. Silver is obviously more of a speculation at this point and a little bit more volatile. It's an industrial metal and has more uses than gold. Central banks, on the other hand, are stockpiling gold, and so it's more concentrated wealth. But I guess the only one that I would look at, like I would really recommend, and I tell this to everybody, the three magic words here are allocated, segregated, and insured. Unless the person that you're working with, the vault that you're working with, is 100% allocated, 100% segregated, 100% insured. If you hear anything else besides these three things, I want you to run. And I know for a fact that SWP is allocated, segregated, insured. So that's amazing. By the way, this is a funny picture. This is me 10 or 15 years ago at a gold vault in Singapore. This is young Mikkel with no beard. I look like a baby there, but I still put it in because I think it's funny. Okay, legal tax mitigation. So recommendations. Obviously, work with only whitelisted strategies. No dirty dozen, no trying to do things that are skirting the lines. There's so many good options out there. So make sure you're just doing the whitelisted ones. Find qualified and licensed professionals who can sign off on the work. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a CPA, but I have lawyers who work for me. And I have lawyers that are not in-house, but I work with on a daily basis. We have very strong relationships with. So literally the lawyers and the accountants, they sign off on everything that we're doing. I can bring the lawyer on a call and we do a group call on a lot of the work. And, what does it look like from a financial side? What does it look like from a legal side? What does it look like from a tax side? What does it look like from a lifestyle side? So while we're going through this work, we look at all aspects of this. Now, another thing that I see all the time with clients is they get really confused. They're trying to get, you know, have something, a property or a project or a strategy do too many things. And I always try to bring people back to center. And I'm telling them, focus on the goals and the objectives. Once we understand really what the goals and the objectives are, should you do something becomes a lot easier of a question to answer. But you need to be able to make changes in your life because, going through this work that we're doing, it takes time, it takes money, it takes effort. So you have to be willing and open to making these changes, especially on the tax side. And that might include leaving the country that you grew up in or live in, because that's really where a lot of the magic happens. Then understand the options that are available. I'm often able to save people, a substantial amount of tax within the first call or two because they don't even know what's available. They don't even know the programs that are out there because their CPA from down the street has never told them because they have no experience with offshore or international types of things. Yeah. So my recommendation is follow the laws and your obligations of the country and choose a place with a more favorable tax system. Now, the favorite tax system of mine is called territorial tax system. So territorial tax system is one where you are only required to pay taxes on locally sourced income, and foreign sourced income is not taxed regardless of where you are living or if you are a tax resident there. So this is often called a tax haven. Now, tax haven in recent years have gotten a bad name, but I want to take back this word because I think it's a term that we should be proud of. And I want to rename it tax heaven. I think tax heaven is zero tax. I think 0.00% is the correct amount to pay. So some countries actually have 0% corporate tax, 0% capital gains tax, 0% wealth tax, 0% inheritance tax, 0% property tax, 0% sales tax, 0% tax on dividend distribution, zero tax on royalties, 0% tax on Social Security, 0% gift tax, and as we said, 0% tax on personal income. Some countries have no tax department. They don't even have a tax department. Tax heaven. I think that this is amazing. Okay. So that's the four. The plus one is the lifestyle. The lifestyle is the thread that ties everything together in our work, right? So this is self-determination. This is your personal responsibility. Where are you going to be? What are you going to do with your life, right? So we're usually choosing a country that has ease of access. Cost of living is going to be less. Healthcare is still going to be very, very high. Going to have a sound legal system that's going to protect your rights. Time zone's very important. I used to live in the Middle East. I moved over to Latin America because I wanted to be on a Central Time or Eastern Standard Time. I grew up with 3 feet of snow in the winter. I absolutely hate it. Now I wear shorts basically all day long. And I think that's amazing. I want to be in warm weather because for me, climate's very important. The activities of what you want to do in your free time, your value system. We're very conservative, my family. So we like being in a family first type of country. I don't want to be in a very progressive type of environment. I don't agree with those types of things. If that's for you, then amazing, but not for me. So for my value system, Latin America works really well. Now, standard of living, I still want to have very high standard of living. I speak Spanish. I learned Spanish in Latin America. Learning Swahili or something would probably be more challenging for me. So I kind of pick a country that has a similar language that I could pick up. So a Romance language or something like that. And then schooling for your kids. My kids are homeschooled. So, it's fine here because it's legal to homeschool in Panama. But, how you want, if you want your kids going to an international school, a local school, Catholic school, homeschooling, what does that look like if you have a family? And then obviously we need on the other side, not just the family side, but the infrastructure. So, what is in the city? What are the roads like and all these things? Safety. Everybody wants safety. I always get this one. I want to live in a safe place. Listen, everybody wants to live in a safe place. That's normal. Like even in that, some of our reports, we do a breakdown of all of the safety. And then social life, being able to go out for a nice food or a coffee. I personally, I'm really particular about living in a food, water, and energy independent country. I don't want to live in the Middle East anymore in the desert where it's 55 degrees Celsius and they have to import almost all of their food and they have to desalinate all of their water. That made me super nervous. So I moved to a country we got lots of rainfall and pretty much everything grows here. And then religion, political stability, access to goods and services, your rights as a foreigner. And then lastly, like, are you actually welcome there? Like, do people want you there? Like, if you look what's happening in Spain and Portugal and some of these countries in Europe, like, they don't want foreigners there at all. They're like, they don't want expats. They're blaming expats for all of their problems. Okay. So, as promised, I have detailed a very thorough explanation of practical ways to build a plan B as your fortress. But how do you put all of the pieces together? Okay. The way that I see it is you really have two options. You can study for thousands of hours, mentor with the best professionals in the world, travel around the globe to explore, build in person relationships, and do massive amounts of expensive trial and error. These are the things that I did. It took me 25 years to get here. It's possible. You guys are clearly a smart group of people. It is absolutely possible you can do it. But what is your time worth to go through all of this? And then what are mistakes going to cost you? You know, I made a lot of mistakes in my life and I learned so much from that. You know, it's always like the best way to learn is learn from your mistakes. It's like, no, the best way to learn is from someone else's mistakes. You don't need to go through the same mistakes I did. Okay. And then do you even have enough time until the world falls apart? Maybe, I don't know. Right. And then option two is work with us. You guys can fill out an application to work with us. You'll take a qualifying call with my team to see if it's a good fit from both sides. We're very lucky at this point. We're very particular about who we work with. We're very choosy. So it has to fit from both sides. So I guess my invitation is let me save you 25 years. If you guys want help with these things, I'd be super happy to help you through them. You can fill out an application, expatmoney.com/membership, expatmoney.com/membership. So I guess I'm going to leave you with this, and we can do a few minutes of Q&A. So what would it be worth to you to know that your family is out of harm's way? Will the wealth that you have built be protected, and that greedy, unjust governments can't just come in and confiscate what's yours? That when they collapse the economy, your money won't just become worthless. That you have secured your freedom. Really think like what is that worth to you, right? Anyways, you can fill out an application if you want help with these things, expatmoney.com/membership. So happy to do some Q&A, David. And you said 45 minutes, and I think I went 60 seconds over, but we're pretty good, I would say.
I know we really just scratched the surface. You have a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate the time sharing it with us today. We did get a few questions in advance. We're going to start with, we got a couple pop up in the chat. Any SWP specific questions? I'm going to respond to those, after the call via email, just to kind of save your time. We did have one pop up. The question is that it appears that most of this is directed to individuals who have a significant amount of personal wealth. What if you don't have such significant assets? What is the approach? What is an approach that takes up all your resources and leaves you with monthly costs, such as having to pay property management, etc.? So effectively, what can the average person do? Is this only for the wealthy?
Definitely not only for the wealthy. Now, I work one-on-one with wealthy families, but at expatmoney.com, we have an amazing amount of free resources on there. We actually have three levels. We have call it 90% of what we do, we give away for free. And then we have three different levels of programs. We've got a membership program that gives you all the information, all the contacts. You can do it yourself. We have a group coaching program where I have a call in 12 minutes, starting with, I don't know, 15 of our group coaching clients. So I'm going to have to jump off and call it 11 minutes so I can use the washroom. But and then we have our private client, which is the high end service. But I think the number one thing that you should be thinking about is building wealth. So most people, what they're doing is they're just trading time for dollars, and they're very, they get into the stock market, things go up, they buy more, things go down, they get freaked, they sell. So you're buying high and you're selling low. This is the opposite, obviously, of what we want to do. What I'm doing is really encouraging people to collect assets. All right. So I like gold and real estate. Remember, gold and real estate was the story. So every extra dollar that we have, we just put into these. Now, if things can cash flow, even better. And as you build up assets, you just want to collect them. It's like my daughter, she's 9 years old. She collects Pokemon cards. Okay. We just collect assets. And, this is also why when you have a property that's $100,000, that's affordable to most people because if we're doing pre-construction, it's a 2-year build cycle. Most of the times the way we structure things is 10% down at signing of the contract, 10% at breaking ground, and 10% 6 months after that. So you're going to be in this example, $10,000, and then 6 months later, $10,000, and 6 months later, $10,000. So you can pretty much save that up. And then the balance paid at delivery. And at delivery, your risk of the property, something happened to it, is very, very low because the property's built. And you can start cash flowing on basically day one. As soon as it's furnished and the electricity is turned on, you can start cash flowing. And you just start building that out, property by property by property. I think that is the number one thing that I would be working on.
Following up with that, we have a question. Do you always have to be a resident to open accounts in tax haven countries? Speaking specifically for the Cayman Islands, I can say that you do need to have a solid nexus to the island. So that's going to be residency, employment, or a property or business in the country. So it is pretty difficult here in Cayman, but I'm not sure about some of the countries you deal with.
The bulk of the countries, it's definitely easier to open a offshore bank account when you are a resident. Now, it wasn't always the case. Offshore really meant that you could be a non-resident and opening an account. But with KYC and AML and anti-terrorism financing and all these types of things, they really want you to be a resident and they want to meet you face to face. So virtual is also very, very difficult. We're able to do it in certain countries with certain banks, but that's because we have long-standing relationships with them. And when someone is a client, we vouch for that client because we've already done our own KYC. So even like, client comes in, we have responsibilities to be able to do proper KYC, and then we'll pass the client on to the bank, and the lawyer will vouch for this client. This is why we don't just do it for general public. It's why you go to the website, there's no like, here, open a bank account. It's because we have to put our reputation on the line. We have an obligation. So basically, it's possible, but it's much easier if you are a client of a law firm or of a consulting firm like ours. It doesn't have to be ours, but you need to work with someone as an intermediary in these cases, or become a resident. And then when you're a resident, you should be able to walk into any bank.
We did have a question submitted in advance from a Canadian client. I know you grew up in Canada, still Canadian
Indeed.
citizen, so maybe you'll have some insight. The Canadian government requires voluntary disclosure of our offshore precious metals. Assuming a citizen does everything legally and reports their stored gold, how would one prevent the current or next government from seizing those metals? And what would happen if they froze our bank accounts until we handed over our offshore gold?
I mean, I follow all of the laws, but I find it very hard to believe that they would actually go after offshore precious metals and like freeze your bank account until you handed over metals that are overseas. I think that they will more likely go after low-hanging fruit. So I feel quite confident about holding my metals overseas in jurisdictions in private. Now, I'm not a Canadian tax resident, so I have no filing requirements to Canada. And I would highly suggest you guys looking at the same because we're actually quite privileged as Canadians. Once we do our deemed disposition and our final tax return and we physically leave Canada, we have no tax obligations or reporting requirements back to the Canadian government, with the exception of Canadian sourced income and Canadian real estate. So once you move everything overseas, you remain a Canadian citizen. You still have a Canadian passport. You can always go back, but really you're breaking up with CRA. You're getting a divorce from CRA. And I think that this is a relationship that needs a divorce. So I guess that would be my recommendation.
I think you took the words right out of my mouth there, talking about low-hanging fruit. At the end of the day, you can do a number of things to try and protect yourself, and anything you do is going to be better than zero. So you just need
Correct.
to take the steps, do what you can, and try to get ahead of the curve because you do not want to be the low-hanging fruit if something were to happen and governments decided to start confiscating people's assets.
Well, here's an interesting one, David. In my work, I have seen a lot of people who want to do something, but then they always poke holes in it. Well, it's not this, it's not perfect. It's got this one little thing, and I like this, but I don't like that. And really what they're looking for is Shangri-La, okay? And at that time, they're still sitting in Toronto or New York or Los Angeles or something like that, and they're doing nothing, okay? And they always find all these little nitpicky things, and it's like, don't worry about it. Just take one step towards freedom, and then once you've got that, take another step, and then take another step, and these things compound. And it's okay if it's not perfect. If you can just head in the general direction of freedom, you are going to be a lot better off. But you got to do something. You can't just sit in your living room and do nothing. You got to take action. So that would be, oh, that's my alarm. I got 3 minutes left, David. But that's
Okay.
my recommendation for that.
So we're just going to put a quick one to you. This was came in advance. Do you have any strategies for wealth preservation or thoughts as to the use of precious metals for living expenses in Uruguay or other South American countries if there's a dollar crisis or a potential local currency crisis?
I think that this SWP capital is amazing. I really would not be putting large sums of money into banks under this environment at all. So I think that if you're able to, be your own bank and have a good relationship with you guys at SWP, and then just take loans against it, which by the way, and this is not individual tax advice, but I mean, if you're taking a loan against something that's not taxable, if you sell your precious metals, that's a taxable event. Okay. You're going to have reporting requirements, especially if you're an American on these things. But you can take a loan against it, pay your expenses, and go on with your life. But I mean, once again, going back to cash flowing assets, I would also be putting a lot into cash flow so that it replenishes on a regular basis. But I wouldn't be necessarily expecting to walk into the grocery store with some Krugerrands and buying your groceries and things like that. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it will come to that. I think that precious metals will always retain value. They retain value for 5,000 years, but I would rather kind of keep them stored privately and then just take a loan against them as needed and then repay it as needed and use fiat for now. We'll see once again what happens.
We have to do this again. Like I said, we just
100%.
scratched the surface. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. And next time we'll see if we can get a little bit more time and get to more of these questions because it's definitely something that our clients are interested in.
No, happy to come back and hopefully I provided as much value as possible. I tried to cram, the program that I just outlined takes us a year to go through. I do weekly calls with everybody. But if you have little questions or, things that you want assistance with, shoot us an email, support@expatmoney.com. Join our newsletter. We have a daily correspondence at expatmoney.com. And if you want to work with me either in a group format or you just want access to the premium knowledge or you want to work directly with me, everything is at expatmoney.com/membership. And super happy to help your clients, David. And I promise I'll take very good care of everybody. Okay.
Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your evening. For everyone else, sorry we didn't get a chance to answer all the questions. Anything specific, you can send me an email directly. It's dl@swpcayman.com, and I'll do my best to get to them. I hope you're going to be leaving us tonight with some fresh ideas on how to protect your wealth and secure your own plan B. Here at SWP, we specialize in secure offshore storage for gold and silver, headquartered in the Cayman Islands, which, Mikkel has mentioned, we are a tax heaven. We're known for our stability, our safety, and our strict client confidentiality. So if you're starting to look at offshore gold storage or you're already in there, please reach out to us and we'll definitely point you in the right direction. We offer private consultations and we're happy to talk and answer through any questions that you might have. Now, on behalf of SWP, thank you again for being here. We look forward to working with you and helping you protect your wealth and your freedom. Have a great night.